The green ghost of the phantom fiddler still haunts the Welsh mountains. Every month, as the pale silver crescent of a new moon sheds its spectral rays on the spur of these famous rolling hills in southwestern Berks County, and the rustling wind strikes chords of discontent among the maples and oaks, the phantom fiddler returns. Like the mad shrieking of a lost soul, his uncanny music rises from a dilapidated stone pile that once was a homestead. And woe betide the luckless person who disturbs the phantom fiddler while his bony fingers are twitching on his violin.
They claim that our eyes will just be created a slightly different from what they are. We talk these things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. Octavian's here, everybody.
Hello.
What are you doing here? I've punished you and made you only on patron shows, and here you are on the main show.
I find a way.
I banned you. I banished you to only Now, that wasn't on purpose, but at some point you asked me, like, am I only on patron shows? Like, no.
Well, I was fine with it.
It just worked out that way. So welcome to Strange Familiars, Octavian.
Thank you.
The main show.
Yes.
You've been on the main show plenty.
I've been promoted.
You've been on the main show plenty.
I know.
Last week I mentioned that I was doing a book signing in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. The date's been changed on that. Saturday, April 26th, I will be doing a book signing at the House of Oddities, 6 North Market Street, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. That will be a book signing for I Have Never Minded the Loneliness, Hermits and Their Stories. If you can come out and see me, please do.
What day of the week is that?
That is a Saturday, April 26th. Not sure the times yet. I'll drop the times a little bit later, but figured I'd mention it now, and people can start making plans to come see me in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. Elizabethtown's a cool town.
I haven't been yet.
You didn't go with me when I did that other thing at the House of Oddities there?
I don't think so. But I'll go to this.
Okay. I was almost certain you went with me. I know John went, but I thought you went too.
I don't think so.
Okay. It's like the little dime museum kind of place, like oddities and stuff like that, the museum. I thought you were there.
Yeah.
You were not.
It must have been my doppelganger.
Monstrous March continues. I'm over halfway through.
Yeah, the drawings have been very on point.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I waited till I wanted to go halfway through the month before I did a Bigfoot proper.
Yeah.
There are some things that sort of maybe answer to a Bigfoot, but a Bigfoot proper I waited till over halfway through the month. Just because I did so many for Squatchtober. So we'll see what the rest of the month brings. I really don't know. I have no clue. I get to the drawing board and that, whatever hits me is what I'm doing. All right, on tonight's show, we're going to be talking about Dr. Dady, a notorious character from Pennsylvania's past. And we got some stories of some phantom fiddlers as well. Before we get to that, I'd like to thank our patrons. Thank you, patrons. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your help. Strange Familiars is brought to you by our patrons because we could not make the show without them. If you like what we do, if you'd like to help us make Strange Familiars and get extra content besides, you can become a patron at Patreon. It's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free versions of the weekly show, plus extra episodes. We do at least one full extra episode, sometimes more for our patrons every month. For more information, you can go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars.
And the biggest draw is I'm there sometimes.
Well, you're definitely part of the ongoing paranormal experiment.
Yes.
Which is another advantage of being a Patreon patron. It's not too late for that. I think you can probably jump in on that at any time, though, throughout the year as we're doing that. That should be a fun and interesting thing to do. So that's another advantage for Patreon patrons. Once again, it's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. There's also an option on Apple Podcasts. It's called Patron of the Strange there, and Apple Podcast subscribers get the commercial-free weekly episodes and the bonus episodes monthly. Thank you, patrons, no matter where you signed up. I cannot tell you where I came across this character. I came across him a few months ago, this Dr. Dady. I don't know what search I was doing, but somehow he came up in my research for something. And I started doing research on him and put it all aside and said, someday I'm going to do a show on this guy. Was hoping to find more information. There's not a ton of information on him. Ghosts in black, ghosts in white, magic circles, a mysterious dulcimer elixir. It's all part of an early American scam conceived by one Dr. John Dady. John Dady first came to America during the Revolutionary War. He was born in Germany and came over with the Hessians. You know what the Hessians were?
Yes.
German soldiers hired by the British during the American Revolution. Dady was fluent in both German and English, which gave him an advantage in what was at the time a very bilingual Pennsylvania, if he could speak both German and English. It is unclear if he had any training in religion. It's doubtful, though. But he became a minister around Millerstown in Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. It was noted that he possessed what was called a fascinating eloquence of speech.
As do I.
This no doubt aided him in his pursuits. Now, during his stint as a minister, he had his first run-in with the law. The newspapers do not note what the crimes were, but it said he appeared in court wearing his minister robes, I guess trying to get a little respect or mercy from the judge there.
He's already starting to remind me of my my old relative.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one Levi Lupton.
Are you going to do a show on him?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great story. So perhaps due to his legal troubles, John Dady then moves to western York County, which is in what now would be Adams County.
Okay.
Way west. And here he portrays himself as a doctor. In the 1700s, one could become a doctor through medical college or by apprenticeship. And most doctors in America at that time became doctors through apprenticeship. This usually meant studying under another doctor for 7 years, after which the apprentice would be issued a certificate of proficiency, which was at that time considered equal to a medical degree from a college. However, until the second half of the 1800s, there was no attempt to regulate who could call themselves a doctor in America. So basically anybody could be a doctor. And certainly John Dady would not have been above forging a certificate or faking his qualifications, given what we know about him later on. In 1797, Dady meets up with two men, Rice Williams, a.k.a. Rainsford Rogers, a New Englander, and John Hall, a New Yorker. Williams and Hall had been scamming their way through the South before finding their way to a neighbor of Dady's in then York County, now Adams County. And it seems that Williams, Hall, and Dady made quite the trio. Their exploits are first detailed in the Franklin Repository from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, in an article published on April 25th, 1815. However, the Gettysburg compiler revisited the story on January 23rd, 1900, and their article presents a few more details. Dr. Dady, a notorious character who once lived in Adams County. This was a notorious character many years ago. The subjoined account of him and his operations is taken from Carter and Glossbrenner's History of York County, published in 1834. So most of this stuff happens in 1797. So these articles are written not long after this happened. The following account of that noted impostor, Dr. Dady, is taken nearly word from that written by the Honorable John Joseph Henry, and sent by him to Philadelphia with the convicted impostors. Judge Henry wrote the account from notes taken at the trial. It follows, in most things, the order of the testimony as given in by the witnesses. Dr. Dady, who was German by birth, came to this country with the Hessians during the American Revolution. Possessing a fascinating eloquence in the German language and being very fluent in the English, he was afterwards employed as a minister of the gospel by the uninformed but honest Germans. When the sacerdotal robes could no longer be subservient to his avaricious views, he laid it aside and assumed the character of a physician. As such, he came to York County and dwelt among the poor inhabitants of the mountainous part thereof, now within the limits of Adams County. where, in various artful ways, he preyed on the purses of the unwary. Of all the numerous impositions with which his name is connected and to which he lent his aid, we will mention but two. The scene of one of them is in what is now Adams County, where he dwelt, and the other in the barrens of York County. The following is an account of the Adams County imposition. Rice Williams, or rather Rainsford Rogers, a New Englander, and John Hall, a New Yorker, both of whom had been plundering the inhabitants of the southern states by their wiles, came to the house of Clayton Chamberlain, a neighbor of Dady, in July 1797. On the following morning, Dady went to Chamberlain's and had a private conversation with Williams and Hall before breakfast. After Dady had left them, Williams asked Chamberlain whether the place was not haunted. Being answered in the negative, he said that it was haunted, and that he had been born with a veil over his face. He could see spirits, and had been conducted thither 60 miles by a spirit. Hall assented to the truth of this. In the evening of the same day, they had another interview with Dady. Williams then told Chamberlain that if he would permit him to tarry overnight, he would show him a spirit. This being agreed to, they went into the field that evening, and Williams drew a circle on the ground, around which he directed Hall and Chamberlain to walk in silence. A terrible speech was soon heard, proceeding from a black ghost in the woods, at a little distance from the parties, in a direction opposite to the place where Williams stood. In a few minutes, a white ghost appeared, which Williams addressed in a language which those around him could not understand. The ghost replied in the same language. After his ghostship had gone away, Williams said that the spirit knew of a treasure which it was permitted to discover to 11 men. They must be honest, religious, and sensible, and neither horse jockey nor Irishman. Oh, I don't know about the prejudice of horse jockey, but
Yeah.
the Irish were treated not kindly. McSherrystown, outside of Hanover, is basically a little Irish town. They kind of shoved all the Irish
Oh, okay.
into a little Irish town there. Wow. The intercourse between Williams and Dady now ceased to be apparent, but it was continued in private. Chamberlain, convinced of the existence of a ghost and a treasure, was easily induced to form a company, which was soon effected. Each candidate was initiated by the receipt of a small sealed paper containing a little yellow sand, which was called the power. This power the candidate was to bury in the earth to the depth of 1 inch for 3 days and 3 nights, performing several other absurd ceremonies too obscene to be described here. Now, this is obscene as of 1900.
Yeah.
You know, this was originally written much earlier. One wonders what that is. Also, it's not unlike some of the prescriptions in
I was going to say that, like,
in
someone
grimoires,
was,
right?
Yeah, someone knew something.
Yeah. A circle 2 feet in diameter was formed in the field, in the center of which there was a hole 6 inches wide and as many deep. A captain, lieutenant, and 3 committeemen were elected. Hall had the honor of captaincy. The exercise was to pace around the circle. This, it was said, propitiated and strengthened the white ghost, who was opposed by an unfriendly black ghost, who rejoiced in the appellation of Pompey. In the course of their nocturnal exercises, they often saw this white ghost. They saw Mr. Pompey, too, but he appeared to have his back up, bellowed loudly, and threw stones at them. So again, we have what appears to be people playing ghosts and playing at ritual, but what they're doing has elements of real rituals, and you get this stone throwing.
Yeah. And a figure in white, you know.
Yeah. On the night of the 18th of August, 1797, Williams undertook to get instructions from the white ghost. It was done in the following manner. He took a sheet of clean white paper and folded it in the form of a letter, when each member breathed into it 3 times. This being repeated several times, and the paper laid over the hole in the center of the circle, the instructions of the ghost were obtained. The following is a short extract from the epistle written by the ghost. Go on and do right and prosper, and the treasure shall be yours. I am permitted to write this in the same hand I wrote in the flesh, for your direction. Take care of your powers, in the name of and fear of God, our protector. If not, leave the work. There is a great treasure, 4,000 pounds apiece for you. Don't trust the black one. Obey orders. Break the enchantment, which you will not do, until you get an ounce of mineral dulcimer elixir. Some German doctor has it. It is near and dear and scarce. Let the committee get it, but don't let the doctor know what you're about. He is wicked. The above is but a small part of this precious communication. In consequence of these ghostly directions, a young man named Abraham Kephart waited, by order of the committee, on Dr. Dady. The doctor preserved his Elixir in a bottle sealed with a large red seal, and buried in a heap of oats, and demanded $15 an ounce of it. Young Kephart could not afford to give so much, but gave him $36 and 3 bushels of oats for 3 ounces of it. Jost Leiner, another of these wise committeemen, gave the doctor $121 for 11 ounces of the stuff. This is $121 in 1797.
Yeah.
It's crazy
Unseen
money.
numbers these days.
The company was soon increased to 39 persons, many of whom were wealthy. Among those who were most miserably duped may be mentioned Clayton Chamberlain, Jost Leiner, Thomas Bigham, William Bigham, Samuel Togart, John McKinney, James Agnew the Elder, James McCleary, Rob Thompson, David Kissinger, George Sheckley, Peter Wickert, and John Phillips. All these and many other men were, in the words of the indictment, cheated and defrauded by means of certain false tokens and pretenses, to wit, by means of pretended spirits, certain circles, certain brown powder, and certain compositions called mineral dulcimer elixir and Detrix mineral elixir. I did look up Detrix mineral elixir. That was a real thing.
Okay.
I've seen ads on that. Now, I don't know if somebody read this article way back when and decided to make it, but I found ads, like old newspaper ads for Detrix mineral elixir.
Okay.
But the wiles of these impostors were soon exerted in other parts. The following is an account of the proceedings in and about Shrewsbury Township in York County. Williams intimated that he had received a call from a ghost resident in those parts, at the distance of 40 miles from Dady's. Jacob Weiser, one of the conspirators, was the agent of Williams on this occasion. He instituted a company of 21 persons, all of whom were, of course, most ignorant people. The same and even more absurd ceremonies were performed by these people, and the communications of the ghost were obtained in a still more ridiculous manner than before. The communications mentioned Dr. Dady as the person from whom they should obtain the dulcimer elixir, as likewise a kind of sand, which the ghost called Asiatic sand, and which was necessary in order to give efficacy to the powers. Ulrich Neff, a committeeman of the company, paid Mr. Dady $90 for 7½ ounces of the elixir. The elixir was put into vials, and each person who had one of them held it in his hand and shook it as he pranced around the circle. On certain occasions, he anointed his head with it, and afterwards, by order of the spirit, the vial was buried in the ground. Paul Ballater, another of the committeemen, took with him to Dr. Dady's $100 to purchase Asiatic sand at $3 per ounce. Dady being absent, Williams procured from the doctor's shop as much sand as the money would purchase. In this instance, Williams cheated the doctor, for he kept the spoil to himself, and thence arose an overthrow of the good fraternity. Each of the men now set up for himself. Williams procured directions from his ghost that each of the companies should dispatch a committeeman to Lancaster to buy Dietrich's mineral elixir at a physician in that place. In the meantime, Williams and his wife went to Lancaster, where they prepared the elixir, which was nothing but a composition of copperas and cayenne pepper. Mrs. Williams, as the wife of John Huber, a German doctor, went to Dr. Rose with a letter dated 18 miles from Newcastle, Delaware, which directed him how to sell the articles, etc. The enormity of the price aroused the suspicion of Dr. Rose. In a few days, the delegates from the committee arrived and purchased elixir at the amount of $740.33. Again, in 1797.
Well, do you know how much, I looked it up, $97 in 1797 would be $2,000 and $2,400 today.
Wow.
Yeah.
When the lady came for the money, she was arrested, and the secret became known. Her husband, Williams, escaped. The Lancaster expedition, having led to the discovery of the tricks of the impostors, a few days after the disclosures made by Mrs. Williams, an indictment was presented in the criminal court of York County against Dr. John Dady, Rice Williams, Jesse Miller, Jacob Wister, the elder, and Jacob Wister, the younger, for a conspiracy to cheat and defraud. The trial took place in June following, and resulted in the conviction of Weiser the elder and of Dr. Dady, the former of whom was fined $10 and imprisoned 1 month in the county jail. The latter fined $90 and sentenced to 2 years' confinement in the penitentiary at Philadelphia. Dady had just been convicted of participating in the conspiracy in Shrewsbury when he and Hall were found guilty of the like crime in Adams County, whereupon Hall was fined $100 and sent to the penitentiary for 2 years, and Dady was fined $160 and sentenced to undergo an additional servitude of 2 years in the penitentiary to commence in June of 1800, when his first term would expire. Thus ended the history of a man in this county who certainly was not devoid of talent, who possessed a most winning address, and was a thorough master in quick and correct discernment of character. He reigned for a season with undisputed sway in what was then the western part of York County. His cunning, for a long time, lulled suspicion to sleep. The history of his exorcisms should teach the credulous that the ghosts which appear nowadays are as material as our own flesh. Super interesting.
Very interesting.
My thought is that, I would have liked to have been around back then because as hoaxers go, I bet stuff was popping off around them.
Yeah. I was going to mention, the phenomenon that happens to people who make crop circles. Mm-hmm. That always rings true.
Yeah, yes. And there was enough going on there that makes me go, Mm-hmm. So I found a plot of land in Adams County, what is now Adams County, 110 acres owned by Dr. John Dady from 1797. The interesting thing is this will put Dady near what would become to be called the Black Corner region of Adams County. And that is where another character we covered would take refuge, Henry Heist. See Strange Familiars episode 299, Last Man on the Gallows. We're crossing over here with some of our Strange Familiars characters. Dr. John Dady was sentenced to prison. However, on November 4th, 1801, the Pennsylvania Republican in York, Pennsylvania, published the following article. Governor McKean's clemency. His Excellency has been pleased to pardon the notorious swindler of York County, Dr. John Dady, particularly well known in the black jug business, also well known to Dr. Rose of this borough, who it is said still holds about $700 of the jug money. So that's from the Pennsylvania Republican from York, Pennsylvania, November 4th, 1801. So he was pardoned. He served some time, but not nearly all of it. This part is interesting to me. So on November 18th, 1801, the Lancaster Intelligencer published a defense of the governor's pardon. Governor McKean's clemency, reflecting on the pardons granted by His Excellency to John Dady and Elijah Crane party. It ought to be known that no blame in this business can be attached to the governor, who, it is well known, resisted several applications for their pardon, signed by many very worthy and respectable characters, and at last only pardoned the men on their being recommended by the Board of Inspectors of the prison, whose province it is to recommend such of the convicts as, from observation of their character and behavior, they deem proper subjects of the governor's clemency. The inspectors, it is true, may be deceived, however good their intentions. Governor McKean is a man, and therefore may have his faults, but let him not be subjected to censure, where, in the legitimate exercise of his power, he merits praise. Okay, so Dr. Dady is pardoned. And then we come to 1808, which was an election year. And Dr. Dady has dropped the doctor from his name, but makes a public declaration that is published in the newspaper. This is published in the Lancaster Intelligencer, April 15th, 1808. Public declaration. Whereas some ill-disposed person or persons have represented that I should have turned in favor of Simon Snyder, Esquire, to vote or make interest for him at the next governor's election, this I absolutely say to be false, for I would not change my mind upon any account whatsoever. I always will give my vote and all my interest for a friend of the Constitution to be the governor of the state of Pennsylvania, John Dady. This is odd.
Mm-hmm.
Simon Snyder was running against Governor McKean,
Yeah.
who had pardoned him. Why would Dady feel it necessary to put this declaration in the newspaper?
Mm-hmm.
McKean would go on to lose that election.
Hmm.
Simon Snyder won. Simon Snyder was the next governor. I'm wondering if Snyder's people didn't pay for this because Dady was not well liked.
Mm-hmm.
They're calling him a scammer to sort of move people
Yeah.
to vote for Snyder.
That would
Like,
make sense.
It's odd. Like, why? Who cares what Dr.
Yeah.
Well, he's not going by doctor. Who cares who John Dady is voting for?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's weird. So evidently, John Dady was arrested in Lancaster County for forging banknotes around that time. So he had moved on to Lancaster County. He was apparently discharged without a trial. And a note in the Lancaster Intelligencer on October 18th, 1808, asked the new governor to reconsider the case. The election is now over. The governor and the governor's friends are called upon by an indignant public to slate the grounds upon which Dr. John Dady was discharged without a trial upon 3 indictments found at last term by the grand jury of Lancaster County for forging and issuing, knowing to be forged, certain banknotes. He's pardoned once, and he's let go again,
Yeah.
on another charge. Was this guy just completely silver-tongued?
That's what I'm thinking.
Talk his way out of anything?
If he's that eloquent, with his
Yeah.
verbiage.
Yeah. I don't know what came of that. I don't know what came of Dady. I looked him up on Find a Grave. I can't find his grave. I don't know what happened to him when he died or anything. But the last mention I found of him is in the Lancaster Intelligencer on November 3rd, 1810. And there's an advertisement for a sheriff's sale. By virtue of writ of Vendition Expone, and I probably pronounced that wrong, to me, directed will be sold by public venue on Tuesday, the 6th day of November next, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, at the house of Jacob Steely, innkeeper, in Reamstown, a certain tract or piece of land situate in Calico Township, containing 25 acres, with the usual allowance, be the same more or less adjoining lands of Andrew Yount, Andrew Shimp, and the late of Christian Eisenman, with the appurtenances of the estate of John Dady, seized and taken in execution as the property of the said John Dady, and sold by James Humes, Sheriff. Sheriff's Office, Lancaster County, October 6, 1810. So I'm thinking that since they're saying the land was seized, Dady didn't die,
Yeah.
right? It was taken from him. It was
Right.
seized.
Yeah.
So he must have gotten in more trouble, but what that was,
Yeah.
I do not know. So I'll see if I can find more information on him. The whole thing I found incredibly interesting, though.
It's super interesting, especially obviously for me the ritual and the magic part because
Yeah. They're doing magic circles.
yeah, someone must have had a very in-depth knowledge about older practices because by this time spirits and treasure had kind of faded as far as their connection.
Mm-hmm.
So someone must have gone back and read these texts that talk about this all the time.
Yes, I mean possibly. Like I'm also wondering how much folk tradition came through
Yeah.
with just like ghost guard treasure.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean that story has so much. It's got the rituals. It's got the ghosts. It's got the hunt for treasure, digging in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's super cool. So that's Dr. Dady, another character from early York County.
Yeah.
He appears in many books, and none of them that I found have any more information.
Okay.
In fact, all the stuff post-trial, all the stuff about him being pardoned by the governor, all that, that wasn't in any of the books I found. I dug that out of the newspapers.
Okay.
They all kind of end at the same place the article I read ends.
Yeah.
But it was in books on powwow. It was in books on Pennsylvania folklore, history of York County, and it's all more or less the same article.
Okay.
Again and again. So it's...
I wonder if he had any family in the area.
It said he had a sister-in-law, so he must have been married.
Yeah.
Well, next up, we got some stories of phantom fiddlers.
Okay.
You want to try your hand at this one?
Sure. Okay, so this is the Penn Dutchman, dated November 15th, 1950, And the article originally appeared in the Reading Eagle, 1935. The Phantom Fiddler of the Welsh Mountains. The green ghost of the Phantom Fiddler still haunts the Welsh Mountains. Every month, as the pale silver crescent of a new moon sheds its spectral rays on the spur of these famous rolling hills in southwestern Berks County, and the rustling wind strikes chords of discontent among the maples and oaks, the Phantom Fiddler returns. Like the mad shrieking of a lost soul, his uncanny music rises from a dilapidated stone pile that once was a homestead near Bowmansville, not far from the New Holland Road, and woe betide the luckless person who disturbs the Phantom Fiddler while his bony fingers are twitching on his violin. Strangers who happen to wander into these highlands, and they are few and far between, will, if they meet Uriah Cole, hear all about the Phantom Fiddler. They also will hear other stories of the supernatural which will make the shivers trickle over their spine, particularly if the sun is dropping behind the trees and dark shadows are climbing ominously over the ridges and peaks. Lonely Hills. Uriah Cole is a charcoal burner and a typical mountaineer. He lives in an area that lost its grip on progress a quarter of a century ago. No electricity, no gas, a sparsely settled section in which can be found a few woodcutters, a number of charcoal burners, and several mountain farmers.
By the way, so charcoal burner and Berks County, northern Lancaster County there. We did this show on the Blue Mountain Hermits.
Mm-hmm.
They were charcoal burners. Lonely occupation
Mm-hmm.
for all intents and purposes. I mean, I think it says later on that he's married, but a lot of these charcoal burners were essentially hermits.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
they had these charcoal burner huts that they would stay in and so forth. So another connection to a previous Strange Familiars episode there.
Okay. Real depression has visited the mountain areas, too, since Prohibition's demise put an end to the profitable pursuit of moonshine manufacture. It's still made, of course, but the profit isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Says Cole, who at the age of 59 boasts that he has 2 wives and 25 children. City people laugh when they hear mountain stories about the ghost in these hills, but the Phantom Fiddler is no joke. He used to be a powwow doctor when my grandma was a girl. He still goes strong at midnight when the new moon shines on the spook house down in the clearing by the trail. Nothing will grow down there either. The trail on which the spook house is situated leads from New Holland Road, just south of the Berks County line. Seeks new spouse. Cole, who contemplates a new marital venture, because my household needs a better cook, delivers charcoal and firewood to Reading every month. Cole owns the ruined stone homestead in a secluded spot of his 75-acre woodland farm, but he cannot find a tenant for it. Folks around these parts fear the Phantom Fiddler, he said in a subdued tone. Yet, by day, the Welsh mountain country is bright and luminous in autumn's gaudy red and yellow tints. From the dandelions and lady slippers that skirt the trail up to the tops of the red and yellow foliage of the maples and the olive green of the cedars. This is good hunting country, says the grizzled guide, who has no eye for the glorious autumn scene. We are fond of game in season, and I admit sometimes out of season. Plenty of rabbits to bag. Woodcocks and pheasants, too. Old Man Cole lives miles away from any neighbors. Down the trail towards Bowmansville are some tobacco fields and a few little farmhouses hidden in orchards dotted with the red of 1,000 apples. Marigold and scarlet sage. The old Pennsylvanians' love of vivid colors, the red and yellow of their hillside woods in autumn glory, is reflected in the red and yellow paint of farm building and marigold and scarlet sage in the dooryard of all neat-looking country homes by the roadside. Inside the older houses, visitors also recognize the Pennsylvanian's pleasure in all feasts of the eye. Painted chests, from those large enough to hold a girl's trousseau to ones small enough to hold her jewelry. Dr. Abraham L. Loudenslager of Churchtown, a country doctor who knows all the hillbillies, has heard of the Phantom Fiddler many times. The aged doctor sat in his armchair by the log fire, with his fingertips pressed together as he recited his story. Grew up with folk beliefs. I have never seen but often heard of the Phantom Fiddler, out on the old Cole farm. My grandmother, however, knew the witch doctor whose spook, they say, clings to his former homestead on the mountain. That was about the time of the Civil War. But you cannot understand even what little I know about it, unless you let me introduce a few of our so-called folk beliefs. You know what I mean, about a rabbit running ahead of you on the path or cross your path being a sign of good luck and other such beliefs which, I understand, are of native Indian origin. We are all very interested in weather signs and seasons. Our forefathers have always been great readers of almanacs. We see the key to hidden things, and hidden things provoke into activity our genius for speculation. Signs of all sorts foretell, too, our individual fortunes, how it shall go with our fishing, our love affairs, and the future of our children. A source of happiness. We were brought up in familiarity with 101 folk beliefs. Not brought up to believe in them, to be sure, but I have followed, as if by instinct, many of the admonitions, and I rejoiced in omens of good fortune. We were always happy when a cricket chirped on the hearth in winter, or when a black tomcat came of his own accord to stay with us. As a little boy, I always ate the bubbles on my coffee, and faithfully threw salt over my left shoulder when I had spilled it at the table. I still feel in my pocket for silver when I see the new moon over my left shoulder, and I wish upon it if I find it there, and I look for rain after I see spiders' webs on the grass in the morning. You have only to scratch the veneer off any man here to find all sorts of primitive things beneath. With us, a regard for the supernatural is quickly uncovered by such scratchings. The supernatural is an instant to those of us who live in back-country places, as it was in medieval times to our ancestors in the Rhineland. It is more than a portent. It is a sign of disaster to come, if a snowy owl bumps his solid self against one's bedroom window. Those wild eyes and outstretched beating wings and fluff of white feathers, close pressed to the glass, means that he who sleeps within is no better than a dead man.
An owl.
Yeah.
Portent of death.
We doctors still suffer somewhat from competition by powwow or hex doctors in the Welsh mountain region. Like physicians, they will use salve for burns and wounds, but the people think their sympathy remedies are more efficacious. They generally pronounce some rhymes in a mixture of Pennsylvania Dutch and dog Latin, which they rub on their ointment. While this may be considered a specimen of the most pleasant side of hexing, there is also the kind that brings misfortune to the verhexed, bewitched. And now I come to the uncanny tradition about old Isaac Coleman, who has to become the phantom fiddler of the Welsh mountains. The old blackguard died during a roaring thunderstorm some 88 years ago, of age 20 years ago. The Hex Doctor. As my grandfather told the story, there were two farms in the same neighborhood near Bowmansville. Shortly after the Battle of Gettysburg, down where Trout Run slides along under the mountain. The richer farm, of course, was in the valley, the poorer farm on the side of the mountain. The hill man, Isaac Coleman, when he was still young, worked for the valley man at most seasons of the year. Isaac was not yet known to be a witch doctor. They had a disagreement, finally, I understand, not a very serious one, as the valley man thought, but serious enough to make the hill man throw up his job and refuse to come back to it, even after a rather humble visit of his old employer. Labor was scarce then, because of the war. Shortly after this, hogs of the valley man sickened and dropped off one by one until 6 were dead. Meanwhile, one of his mules was mired in a swamp and broke its leg. It had to be shot. A cow died of milk fever after calving. The valley man went over the mountain to see a hermit woman who was famous for her powwow practice. The friendly old hag told the valley man, who rewarded her well, that Isaac, the good-for-nothing hillbilly, had bewitched his stock.
Oh, this is echoes of the hex, the Raymar. Yeah.
That was exactly what the valley man had expected to be told, for the hill man had been suspected by some of the observant members of the Baptist sewing and social circle in Bowmansville of having certain ways of the hex, their main topic of edifying conversation. How the charm worked. The clairvoyant witch lady told the valley man that if he went to one of the great wooden uprights in the underground stable of his red barn, he would find a hole in it with a wooden plug, and hair of the pigs and mule, and a cow behind that plug. He found a hole bored out with an auger, and plugged, of course, and a wad of hair at the back of it. After the removal and burning of the hair, no more stock died, and a blue and yellow star was painted on the red barn wall to keep out evil spirits. The powwow woman advised this. The valley man had no more bad luck that winter, but by spring he was so uncomfortable living there under the eye of Hexerai that he sold out and moved into the Tulpehocken Valley of Berks County. What really drove him out was the ghostly green light he saw every night in the hillman's attic. The valley man thought that there was magic being made there that would end in more trouble for him. Just before the light appeared, the hillman had gone to Reading, and at a favorite farmer's tavern, the Plough and Harrow, now the Merchant's Hotel at 3rd and Penn Streets, he had shown a copy of Albertus Magnus' Secrets, a book written by a great medieval sorcerer and scholar of Cologne on the Rhine. The spectral light. In his cups, he had boasted of the great power of witchcraft in the book. He returned and saw the green light in the attic window. He left the hills in a hurry, never to return. That must have been about 70 years ago, but the hex man lived a long time thereafter and enjoyed a wide practice. He mixed love concoctions and sold medicines for sick men and animals, and whenever he was in his cups, he played the fiddle in the woods, pronouncing charms and curses at the same time. Honest folk gave him a wide berth. He is said to have tricked coal burners and woodcutters and hunters in many ways, long after he had died. They say his soul finds no rest because he murdered a girl who spurned his love. So he is condemned to play dirges at her grave when the new moon rises over the mountain spur. That weird music has been heard together with the appearance of a luminous apparition, a human shape with glowing red eyes, about 7 feet tall between midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, I am told.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe bootleggers. Nobody ever goes near his ruined home at night, but they say you can hear from quite a distance when he plays his fiddle. I do not know whether there is any connection between the phantom and the secret alcohol business in our neighborhood. Some years ago, a big shot in the bootlegging game came here from Maryland to organize the various moonshiners into one concern. I understand he brought a gang of Italians along, and he had them work on old Isaac's homestead to make a warehouse for liquor out of it. The men took up the work until the next new moon came around. Then they broke camp amid shrieks and shouts and never came back. The secret distilling, I understand, has stopped, but the ghost's appearance, I am told, still occurs from time to time. I do not think the phantom is merely a product resulting from the actions of bad liquor upon weak brains, though I know that many of our people used to be insane under the influence of their concoctions. Nowadays, most of the folks here cling to the good homemade beverages of their ancestors, the refreshing cider and delicious cherry, elderberry, and wild plum wine, which is subtle in attack, but being slow to kindle you, but heady at the end. I'd like to get some of that. It should always be drunk, as we are doing today and as our grandfathers did, with Spartan moderation, especially on Sundays and holidays, and never on an empty stomach. The doctor emptied his glass and smiled. Forget specters. Phantoms and demons get those who have no sunshine in their hearts, the doctor resumed. Better forget the phantom fiddler and look at the sun yonder. He pointed to the antique home-made furniture, golden and red and green, in his study, and compared them to the picturesque autumn scene painted by nature on the hills and appeared through the windows in the glow of the setting sun. This love on the part of our ancestors of things dominantly golden and yellow and red is natural, he declared. It is only a phase of the instinctive turning towards the sun of all that has life. Winter aconite unfolds its yellow helmets eastward in the first sunlight of the spring. The stray cat is curled at winter daybreak, in the shelter of the straw stack just where the first rays will strike and warm her, and bring her tortoiseshell coat to a glow. Our people bury their dead on some high spot that glows red in the dawn, bury them with their faces and feet towards the east. The love of the gay and beautiful, then, is nothing more nor less than man's love of the color of life. Superstition on the one hand and a joyous longing for flowers and sunshine on the other, he concluded, are natural expressions of man's emotional balance in its downward and upward trend.
I Have Never Minded the Loneliness. Hermits and Their Stories is my latest book. It's just been published. It's available at Amazon or at your local bookseller or directly from us at our Etsy shop. The links to our Etsy shop are in the show notes, or you can go to strangefamiliars.com and find the links there. I Have Never Minded the Loneliness is over 300 pages of true stories about hermits, some of whom I covered on the show, and a lot of new hermits besides. You get to see photos of almost every hermit I write about, and the book has, in my opinion, the best illustrations I've done for any of my books so far. I Have Never Minded the Loneliness, Hermits and Their Stories by Timothy Renner. It's available now, wherever you get books. So they just kind of left Ulrich there to hang.
Yeah.
Like they started talking about him.
So where is that?
In the Welsh Mountains, it's northern Lancaster County. So here's Lancaster, here's Berks. It's like right on the border.
Okay.
I think it's east of Reading,
Okay.
I believe. While I was searching for that original article, because that came from the Pennsylvania Dutchman, I found an article of another Phantom Fiddler. And this is very exciting to me, because this Phantom Fiddler is on Toad Road.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I did not have this story, and I've never seen this story anywhere else.
Okay.
This is from the York Dispatch from April 26, 1922. Phantom violinist in the hills of the Susquehanna. Spring in deep forest near Saginaw, visited by talented spirit, plays woodland idols. Stranger than tales of the belled buzzard, omen of impending evil in the days of the Civil War, comes the story of a phantom fiddler who sits by a cool spring deep in the woods near where the Cador's Creek pours its yellow waters into the Susquehanna River. The ghostly stranger is a newcomer in the vicinity, and his strange music has been heard by only a few persons, at least one living in the vicinity, and by several who last Sunday, while on long tramps through the woods, stopped at the spring to partake of its cool crystal-like waters. Sometimes by sharp staccatos, as of the plucking of the strings of a violin, the invisible musician startles lone hikers and causes them to look sharply about them, only to gaze into the tangled underbrush and the dense woods typical to Susquehanna River hills. Perhaps the thirsty hiker will not again hear the strange sound, or then again a series of notes alternately discordant and harmonious will either start him on a fruitless investigation or a hasty exit from the little glen at the spring, according to his disposition in matters of ghosts and ghostly things. Then again, one may pause by the spring to hear chorded notes, soft at first, but ascending until it is heard distinctly above the tiny rippling of the little stream, which has its genesis in the depths of the cool spring. Pleased at first by the sweetness of the strange music, mingled with the audible trickling of the waters and the murmurings of the leafy wood, people who have heard it have felt sudden and chilly tightening of the scalp, when, upon looking about them, they realize that the sounds came from nowhere. The musical phantom of the forest is not a wanderer. In no other place, except in the glen where the spring is located, has the music ever been heard, at least in that vicinity. The first authentic report that York County has a first-class spook, and a talented one at that, comes from people living in the vicinity of Vinegar Ferry. It is only 10 or 15 minutes' walk through the woods from that place that the spirit of the spring sought and found its dwelling place. The spring is located on what was once known as the Bloomfield Tract, to be reached only after an hour of trudging rough and hilly country northeast of Helm. The Bloomfield Tract, which is composed of about 85 acres, is partly wooded and partly clearing. The clearing is well concealed from those passing along the roadway by a narrow strip of woods. A lane leading through the strip of woodland bordering the road presents to the trespasser, at its opening into the clearing, a panorama which will likely not be excelled in beauty or grandeur by any to be obtained from any other spot in the county. Away to the north, the Susquehanna winds along the bordering hills. On the west and to the east are the leveled fields of Lancaster County, which continue before the eye until they fade away into the mist of the distant horizon. From the clearing path, at some paces rather ill-defined, leads to the riverfront. It is along this path, deep into the wooded hillside, that the spring pours forth its cold, clear waters to the intermittent music of its adopted spirit. Those who have heard the strange music of the spirit guest are sparing no effort in their leisure moments to find out what is causing the strange sounds and to disprove the opinion of others that they are supernatural. Some who do not believe in ghosts say that the sounds can be explained, and will be explained if they keep up long enough for a thorough investigation to be made. The fact that the change in tone from a low to a treble note, sometimes a plucking sound, and sometimes as if by the drawing of a bow, is what perplexes them most, they say. Not exactly on what is today known as Toad Road, but would have been, as I'm reading this, and I'm guessing, along the towpath.
Okay.
The original, what I included Toad Road as, because I believe it was a tow road that became Toad Road.
Right. I had an experience at the old abandoned church in Daniel's area of Patapsco, where me and a friend were walking. This happened first in just during the day. We just heard violin music coming from across the river.
Oh, wow.
And we never figured out if it was, just a person or
Wow.
what it was. And then it happened again when we went at night.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we noticed that it stopped after we passed a certain tree, and then it would continue when we passed it in the other direction.
I need to figure out where the spring is and visit it. Hopefully it's part of the new park up there.
Yeah.
And I won't have to trespass, but...
Yeah. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Purple paint don't stop me much. So
Now,
we'll see.
the first article of the Phantom Fiddler, is that somewhere we could go?
I don't know. I was looking it up. It depends.
Because if there's some truth to the frequency of it, then...
Yeah, and we didn't comment on that one. So the one that's here in the Helm Hills, they apparently don't see an entity.
Mm-hmm.
But the Welsh Mountain ones, they talk about an entity. 7 feet high, glowing eyes, and green.
Yeah.
Like the intro to the article says it was a green ghost. I don't know if they're just saying that because of the green light they reported at the house, or if someone actually saw a green ghost with glowing eyes. That's super interesting to me.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. Again, this is a time where almost anything freaky or unusual
Was just a ghost.
was just a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll have to try and find Albertus Magnus's Book of Secrets and see.
I mean, I have it.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Egyptian Secrets, yeah. I
Okay.
might have more than one copy. Let me look. But yeah, and then there's a Powwow doctor involved in the first one too. Is super interesting. Super, super interesting. Now that we've given more subjects for the local people who listen to Strange Familiars and then publish Instagram stories as if they discovered this stuff. You know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. No Curiosity of the Week this week. Monstrous March is still in effect. Many more to come yet. We're going to the 31st. I post them at a different time every day, usually when I wake up, sometimes after lunch. You never know. Keep your eye out. I post them first on Patreon, then Discord, then Instagram and or Facebook. So thanks to everybody who's bought one so far. Keep an eye out. There's more to come. There will be, in fact, one tomorrow. And the episode artwork for this episode, that'll be available to purchase as well. That's in the Etsy shop. Our Etsy shop name is Lost Grave. If you go to Etsy and type in Strange Familiars, though, you should see our stuff come up. Also at Etsy, besides artwork, prints and originals, we have my books, including my newest book, I've Never Minded the Loneliness Hermits and Their Stories. But all of my books that are in print are there, and if you get them from us on Etsy, they come signed. Strange Familiars t-shirts, patches, stickers, and more. There's ephemera up there, various photos and other such things. Some of my music is there as well. Check it out. Etsy shop is Lost Grave. There's links in the show notes. It's another way to help us out and keep Strange Familiars going. I think that's it.
Okay.
Octavian,
Yes.
where can people find you?
StrangeDominionspodcast.com, Facebook, Instagram. There has been a hiatus due to life events. I said this like the last time I was on and nothing happened, but there is gears turning. Things are in the works. The show is going to take on a different focus, still the same subject matter, but a very, very drastic change on perspective on that subject matter. If you are a fan, then you'll have new content coming your way.
All right, everybody check it out if you're interested in the intersection of the occult and the paranormal.
Yes.
That's the place to go, strangedominionspodcast.com. All right, thanks for listening, everybody. I'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. Strange Familiars is on Facebook, facebook.com/Strange Familiars. You can join the Strange Familiars gathering group there as well. We're on Instagram @Strange Familiars. One word, no underscore. Please give us a like and a follow there. For Strange Familiars merch, it's strangefamiliars.com/merch, and strangefamiliars.com is open all the time.
Spoke